welcome to the Learning Experience powered by CAST. I'm one of your hosts, Kelly Suding.
And I'm Luis Perez.
And I'm Bryan Dean.
We are three educators here ready to break down barriers until learning has no limits. Let's do this.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another Learning Experience powered by CAST. And I am again in the driver's seat and running the interview today. And I have to tell you, today's conversation is a special one for me because I have the privilege of talking with not only an extraordinary researcher and leader, but also a longtime colleague and I would consider friend, Dr. Sean Smith. And so if you don't know about Dr. Smith's work, then you better get to know about it because it is impressive and there is a lot of it. So just quick bio, Sean is a professor of special education at the University of Kansas and the recipient of the 2026 David Rose UDL Research Award, which recognizes more than 2 decades of his contributions to universal design for learning and inclusive education overall. One of the things that, because I know Sean personally, I feel like I can say this, what I've really always appreciated, or one of the things I've appreciated most about Sean is that he never approaches his work as just research for the sake of research. It's never research done in a bubble. It's, whether it's leading innovative projects like Write and writingclassroom.org and VOISS or AI Score, one of his newer ones, or preparing future educators, mentoring emerging students. His focus has always been on making a real difference in the lives of everyone, of educators and learners and people who support them. It's amazing to me in the ways that Sean has helped shape the field's understanding of how UDL and technology can work together and that they don't work opposed to each other, that they create more together, they create more meaningful and accessible and engaging learning experience. Sean's authored more than 100 publications, secured significant research funding, influenced educators around the world. And yet, despite all those accomplishments, what stands out the most to me is his generosity and his optimism and his unwavering commitment, really to ensuring that phrase of every learner has the opportunity to learn and succeed. I'm excited to spend some time with Sean, as I always am, and talking about the future of UDL, the promise of emerging technologies, the lessons he's learned throughout his incredible career, the opportunities that it's done. So, Sean, congratulations on the award. Congratulations on just being you and everything that you do. And I have to tell you from the deepest part of my heart, man, I am so happy to be having this conversation with you, brother. How are you?
I'm fine, Bryan. I thank you for the time. I thank you for that introduction. That was lovely. A little over the top, but I really appreciate it.
It's all true, though. It's all true, though.
Yeah, no, I want to thank, to get started with Kavita Rao, a colleague, professor at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, who co-nominated me with another colleague here at the University of Kansas, Amber Rowland. Both of them, of their own right. Kavita is a previous recipient of this award.
Exactly.
And Amber needs to be a future recipient of this award.
Yes.
They both have done a lot of work in the area of not only better understanding universal design for learning, but implementing it. And so I need to call them out. And I'll talk about other colleagues along the way. But I want to mention that as we get started.
Right on. And both of them, I've had the pleasure of meeting and doing some work with both of them. And they're amazing practitioners and amazing researchers and follow that same light as you. It's not just research for research, it's research for practice and practice for research. And that strong connection. So I'm going to dive in, man. Here's my first big thing. Like as I said, you've spent more than 2 decades in this world of UDL and inclusive education, either as professor, researcher, mentor, innovator. So, but when you look back at that journey, I got to ask you, like, what are some of your highlights of like the things that have made you most proud? Like what moments stand out as turning points for you?
You shared this a little ahead of time, so I get a chance to do a brief reflection. And I'd have to say 3 things in this point, and not necessarily in order. And first of all, to contextualize the fact that, I've been at this for a while, but to be honored with an award that's named by David Rose, oh my goodness, I still remember the day that David actually knew my name.
Right? That's a big feeling, isn't it?
But the 3 things, the one has been the idea of implementation. So the first work, I'd have to say, when I was first introduced to the framework was, okay, how do we implement this? How do we get this into the hands of teachers? And this work actually paralleled the growth of we have 4 children, and my second child, Nolan, has Down syndrome, parallels. his age, his growth. So he's 25.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't tell you exactly when I first heard about the framework. But as the work continued professionally for implementation, so this is 2000, and I definitely heard about it in the 90s, but
Mm-hmm.
as the work continued with the implementation, I'm living it as one who's a scholar, and I'm putting quotes scholar. And
Yeah.
of course, this audio, so people can't see that. But it's the idea that I was living it with implementation with Nolan. And so I was seeing, and also educators, so I was working with educators as work, but personally, day to day, minute to minute, hour by hour, how do we get this type of support into not only his preschool, early childhood, but then, of course, when the rubber hit the road, into kindergarten and on. And so that implementation part, so representation of that, Stephanie
Mm-hmm.
Craig, former graduate student who now is at a university, Marietta College, or Marietta University in Ohio. She and I, and Lisa Lowry and others, really looked at this idea of implementation and how do we get it to be utilized into the classroom in a meaningful way? Because I'm living it, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid because I'm seeing it with my own son. And I'm seeing the
Yeah,
differences.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Having seen it with educators, having seen it as a scholar, and now living it is like, oh my gosh, yeah. So the implementation would be number one, or one. Another would be the research criteria that we created as a group, as a collective. And this is where I
Mm-hmm.
met you, met with you, Brian, with the IRN.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the whole idea of implementation and research. And I chaired or co-chaired with several colleagues. And we brought in one of our convenings, Kavita Rao, Lisa Lowry, Dave Eddyburn. I know I'm going to miss people, Matt Marino, myself, and I'm missing others. Anya, I know, was in the room. Professor
Yeah.
at Georgia University is always tricky, so I won't do that. But Anya knows who she is. But it's coming up with that criteria to be, because as you know, a lot of, as universal design for learning was being examined and started to be researched, folks were utilizing the framework and saying it was research. And yet, as we unpacked it, we realized very quickly that they may have used the framework, but from a research standpoint, from a design perspective, from how they did it in methodology, et cetera,
Right.
really wasn't examining and evaluating universal design for learning. One of the cautions there was that then they were making conclusions based on that to the field that were initially, yes, maybe questioning it or saying, oh gosh, look what the framework's doing. And the data actually wasn't saying that. It may have been saying something about their literacy program, that they
Sure.
may have utilized the framework to help design. But again, they weren't examining it. So that work, gosh, I think it was over 10 years ago, putting out that criteria to be able to help the field and give them some guidance when it came to thinking about how we actually look at the framework and from a research design. So I'd have to say that's something that's a bit of a milestone. And then the third has just been, over the years, being able to apply universal design for learning in all the work that you've made reference to. I lead with technology. I'm always intrigued with innovation. I think innovation can really make the difference in the lives of individuals with disabilities and struggling learners and their educators and their family members and everyone that surrounds them. And so to be able to take the framework and have it as the foundation for the design that we're doing, and as a foundation for how we're examining everything from iterative design and development to the initial usability and feasibility and the availability, not the accessibility.
Exactly.
It's often, I think, somewhat limiting in how we operationalize it. That's been a key component. So those three things I'd say are kind of things that I reflect on.
And I will say, I love the fact that you just said it's not just accessibility, but it's availability, and that there is a distinction there. And oftentimes we do find ourselves down that road where we are looking at accessibility for good reason, but sometimes at the expense of understanding the availability of this thing, of this technology, this innovation, whatever it is, and availability not just based on region, but also based on individual, how available it is for them to kind of attach to their own learning schema and their own learning process, and if they can even interact with it. I think that's just this nuance that I think that you highlighted really well. I do also have to say, like, you just dropped a banger of a list of like seminal people in UDL. And what I love about it, Sean, is that those are the folks that have really moved the needle, and that they are just colleagues that you have worked with time and time again. It just shows the depth of the bench of talent that exists in our UDL world, and that you're such a seminal piece of that.
And it does. I mean, Cass was instrumental in that, but a colleague, Jamie Basham, professor here at the University of Kansas, and Jeff Diedrich, who still works in Michigan, doing phenomenal work.
Yeah.
The two of them bringing together folks that initially started as the the UDL IRN, Joy Zabella, God rest her soul, and others that were just so critical in bringing, and everyone coming in with a different perspective, be it the
Right.
research or implementation, or operationalizing it, or folks like yourself, Brian, that came to the table going, yeah, I'm doing it every day. Let me tell you about it. I
Yeah.
am utilizing the framework every day. And let me tell you
Exactly.
about it.
Or
And the
trying
colleagues,
to.
yeah, exactly. And colleagues there doing it at the state level, et cetera. So that I've been very fortunate to be including those meetings to interact with those colleagues. So yes.
Right. And then the other thing that you stated, because there was so much that you just unpacked in those three moments. The other one is the first one, is the personal connection that you have to UDL and living it on both this academic and scholarly side, and then living it on a very personal side. Because I say this in just about every podcast or every episode that we have, but I'll shout it from the rooftops and say it with my whole chest that what we do is human centered. It's not just learner centered, it is human
Mhm.
centered. And there has to be a human side to it. There has to be a humanity to what we do. And the UDL framework helps bring that forth with agency and self-actualization and a bunch of other things. And that's part of what I've always appreciated about your work is that there is a personal side to it and that you are making that research useful and practical for educators. It's not just about getting it into their hands, but it's how do you marinate within this UDL sauce, so to speak, and really kind of encompass it because it is affecting people's lives. And so, like your work, like projects like Write, projects like writingclassroom.org, VOISS are just really stellar examples of that. But I do have to ask you because it is always the question, what's the secret, man? Like, what's the secret to bridging the gap between research that's being done and what actually happens in the classroom every day? Because we still ask that question, and I wonder if it's simple but deceptively hard. Like it's simple to state but deceptively hard to do. I don't know. I'm just wondering your thoughts around that, and if you can tell
Well,
me.
I like the way you say thoughts because I only have
Mm.
thoughts. I mean, there's experts out there. Kathleen Lane, a colleague here, has done a lot of work working at translating. I was at the National Down Syndrome Congress's
Mm.
annual convention.
Right.
Down in Orlando, we took over a hotel and convention center. There was several thousand people, about almost a
Oh,
thousand people with Down syndrome there,
oh,
all
that sounds like
ages.
a dope time,
Um,
bro.
it was a lot of fun, but
It
that's
was just dope.
is we brought some people together to think about, so why is it that we have these practices that work in intellectual disabilities and Down syndrome, but we're not using them in the classroom? And
Mm.
so, and I don't, that's a hard question to answer. I tell you, in our work, what we've tried to do is the fact that, gosh, how can we give solutions in the area of innovation to make it more available and to
Mm.
make it something that folks can to utilize? So you've mentioned a couple of things. I'll use VOISS as an example.
Yeah.
VOISS started with, and VOISS is an acronym, and basically we're focused on social competence development and using what virtual reality, but it's so much more. It's really extended reality. It goes across
Yeah.
platforms and all that. But the skinny of it is that we saw the problem with social competence years ago. When we were going on 2 decades probably. Yeah. The challenge was, so from a research side, we knew things were working in the area of social narrative, social competence development. We knew video modeling, we knew other elements were working as practices, and we know they're underutilized. And we also knew, and we still know, that oftentimes, even though these things are critical to learning, oftentimes they're not goals and benchmarks. And so, how do we get what we know that worked, but also do it in a manner that a student doesn't have to have a goal or benchmark on social skills or social competence to actually utilize this? Because we know when teachers in a content or grade level classroom are doing group work, there's an impact. We know when rubber hits the road, beginning middle and
Right.
secondary, middle and high school, that the research is showing us that social competence is a barrier. And of course, we know with employment as well as post secondary.
Yeah.
So from the research side, how do we take that and translate it? At the time, we were looking at, wait, virtual reality was coming out, and that seemed to offer an opportunity for a safe environment, first of all, an opportunity to take these practices and repeat them. So from a social narrative, I go out and practice that with Brian in the classroom or Brian in the cafeteria. Brian's social competence is quite accurate. Mine is quite poor. Brian's only
Mm.
going to practice maybe one or two times and then say, I'm done with this
Exactly.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
how do I get a chance to practice? And by the way, how do I have the chance to crash and burn in a simulated environment language
Yes.
without having the social consequences? So it's like, well, hey, wait, this innovation does this. And how do we take what we know works and put it into this innovation, basically simulated learning, and then see whether or not only do you gain knowledge and skill, but then can you generalize? And
Yeah.
so that would be an example of several things we've done where it's not necessarily, in a way, we have created another intervention, but it's built on what we already know works. And so
Right.
it's a way of translating that research, designing it with the framework in mind, of course, in terms of multiple means of engagement, representation, et cetera. And so by doing that, and of course, the first usability testing, when we were doing it with some science teachers in the middle school environment from an engagement perspective, were
Hmm.
reinforced when the students said, "Can we play that game again?"
Perfect.
It's like they saw it as a game. Great,
Right.
sure.
That's what we want you to see it as. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to clarify the fact that for anyone that's not aware of it, VOISS is out there. VOISS is a product. You can
I
download
was
it.
just going to say
Yeah,
it.
yeah, you can download it App Store, Play Store, but it goes across environments. So we started with this idea of virtual reality, but then we're like, practicality, everyone has Chromebooks. Well, we need to
Hmm.
provide Chromebooks. So you can do it on a wearable headset. You can do it on a Chromebook, iPad, your phone.
Oculus.
You can do it, yeah, your headset, Oculus, et
Yeah.
cetera. So you can do it all there, but we did it, again, from a design perspective, we needed to make it available across. And so right from the get-go, we were very purposeful there to be able to get that research into the hands of practitioners and their students. So today is 140 plus scenarios. Each one of them is individual to 10 different domains, 180 plus social skills. And all, when you take a look at it, it's embedded within the framework. The framework is a cornerstone of the iterative design and, of course, the implementation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I will tell you. So VOISS is one of my favorite projects that you
Oh,
have
good.
worked on because I think it is just so innovative. The fact that the 10 domains exist, the fact that this sits in this almost third space, right? Because there is something about being able to practice it with an actual coach next to you, but you're not taking that away. Right. What you're doing is you're saying, here's a safe environment. And I love the fact that you said, here's a safe environment for you to crash and burn, because that's
Mhm.
what we want to see just as much as we want to see the success. Right. And so being able to put it there now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but it is usually like targeted at middle school, right? Like that is the beginning
Well,
target or
yes and
initial
no.
target.
So the yes is definitely the scenarios are based on situations in the classroom that are more middle school orientated, middle school being fifth through eighth grade. The domains are relevant. So the 10 social domains, receptive language,
Right.
expressive communication, things of that nature, executive functions, those are aligned with social competence or social skill issues that would begin across the lifespan. I mean, elementary, middle, high school, et cetera, post-secondary. The environments we created them in, the situations are the classroom, the hallway with
Yeah.
lockers. So a fourth grade may not have a hallway with lockers, PE classroom, things of that
Right.
nature, the bus. So those are the things that make it more middle high school, because
Right.
we'll have third grade teachers come to us and go, "This is great. Do you have something for third graders?" We
Sure.
did design it from a UDL perspective. We knew language was going to be a component, so we designed it from a readability language back at the elementary level, actually
Right.
the primary level. And then, as you mentioned, with the coaches, we have there's a thought partner in there with them that's walking them through verbally. And of course, we currently have funding. We're still increasing and improving upon this right now with the flexibility and realism of AI, where instead of the
Hmm.
individual coming up with problems and having to respond to, right now it's more via text. And then now the beta test we're testing it's all going to be verbal. They come up with an
Oh,
avatar that's pre-programmed. And that's the other thing from the
yeah.
UDL perspective. We decided very early on that we knew from a design perspective that there are certain pathways one takes for social competence. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the virtual reality work 10 years ago, a lot of that was folks would just go into a virtual reality and interact.
Sure.
And we knew from a design perspective, wait, no, there's certain things that work and certain things that don't work. And so we needed to design in a bit of a pathway and responses that we knew were effective. And then, of course, design it in a way that would be appropriate and reachable to a variety of different individuals. So
Yeah, and you
that's it.
can find it at voiss.org, or
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
there's the Voice Advisor app as
yeah.
well.
And the
Like,
voice
and
advisor.
I'm
So,
definitely good. We're going to throw that definitely in the show liner
yeah,
notes because it is something that you just have to check out, folks. It's amazing. It is
I
innovative
appreciate
even now. And it's designed.
that.
Here's one of the things that I love, Sean, also is that its design is really UDL focused in that as technology gets better and better, this your initial design, the kind of like the framework you put down allows this thing to grow and encompass those new technologies, right? So it's never at a point where it's so outdated it can't be used. And that to me is one of the key pieces of UDL design. And so in so many ways, it's so elegant and it's so innovative. It's always been one of my favorite projects of yours. Yeah, I've shown it to many people who are completely blown away. Folks, I gotta tell you, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. And if it's not something that you're going to put into your practice or use, at least look at it for what great UDL design and focus should look like. It's really quite amazing. So, but that brings us to another project, right? That brings us to one of your newer projects, AI Score. And and artificial intelligence it's a huge, massive push, and there's a lot of fear around it, and there's a lot of hope around it. But especially in education right now. And you're one of the early adopters and innovators around that through work with CITL and lots of other different pieces. And AI Score is one of those initiatives where you've been exploring the possibilities of AI firsthand. I got to ask you, first of all, give us a little brief on AI Score, and then where do you see AI really creating the greatest opportunities for learners with disabilities
Sure.
and learner variability? So if you hit me with that, brother, I'm waiting. I'm sitting back, ready, buckled in, buddy. I'm buckled in.
You can share the same. First of all, AI Score. AI Score is a federally funded project for the U.S. Department of Education. It's a stepping up project. It actually grows from work we've done previously in the area of writing. And this is back to the application of the framework. To me, an easy reason we need to be applying the framework is the fact that middle school, high school, upper elementary, we're asking students to demonstrate their knowledge through writing. And I can sit down with any teacher, and it's almost impossible to answer. And that is, that separation of I'm asking students to demonstrate knowledge on photosynthesis, and you're asking me to do it in some sort of writing format. So, educator, how are you separating it out from a grade perspective, their inability to write, or they're struggling with writing because they're a struggling reader, and we know that's tied together, and their lack of ability to convey to you about their knowledge of photosynthesis. And so, if you're going to continue with writing, and that is the primary way, my goodness, let me introduce you to the framework, why the framework would be applicable to that. And honestly, that is an example we often use. And it's a bit of a light bulb. It's amazing how it's still a light bulb moment where middle and secondary educators particularly think, that's right, I do ask them to write. Oh, no, I don't know how to separate that out. And then they're like, yeah, but they can write. It's like, let me show you some data on readers. Oh, yeah, I have half my class are below grade reading. Okay, let me show you the connection between poor readers and poor writers. Oh, didn't know that data. So anyways, that's a challenge that we've seen for years. And we know there's been technology, my goodness, word prediction, and so many interactive graphic organizers. There's so much technology out there that allows us to reduce some of those barriers and implement elements of the guidelines and considerations and or checkpoints. I'm old, so I talk checkpoints. There's ways to then bring those to life through, you don't have to use technology to implement the framework, but of course there's elements that allow you to do that. And so, and also it makes it more available, more accessible. But we were finding several years, this goes on, over a decade ago, we were finding that, of course, a lot of one-on-one initiatives were happening years ago, but they weren't using the technology already built in. And so that then led to work with teachers to try to integrate those things. What we were finding was teachers were saying, we don't have the data. We don't know where the challenges are. And so that led us to some work where we created a system where they could automatically have the students write and have that automatically graded, and then they'd have some minimal data. Now, from that, the data was minimal. It was number of words, word count, number of words, same thing, spelling, word sequence, things of that nature. It's very quantitative. And as AI then became part of of course, AI has been with us for years, but that GPT introduction in November 2022 is like opened up, oh gosh, there's some opportunities here. And so AI Score is this opportunity to basically continue with giving teachers data about students' writing. We have in literacy and reading with MTSS and others, a lot of progress monitoring tools where students can regularly get progress monitoring in reading and also to a degree in math, but we don't have it in writing at the level that we need. And so AI Score is a progress monitoring tool. We have a bank of writing prompts, informative text, because that's generally what we're asking students to write on upper elementary, middle, secondary. And those writing prompts, we have a library of 300. And the students get a writing prompt. They have a 9-minute write. And then it's all scored for the teacher, ideas, content, organization, and a list of things. But more importantly, so that's great. So the teacher has it. They know exactly where the students are. Every 2 weeks they're using it. But more importantly, the students get feedback right then and there. They get feedback in writing. They get feedback in the organization, content. And we know from the literature, back to that research to practice, If students get immediate feedback in their writing, they're more engaged in the writing process. They are. And of
Yep.
course, you talk to any teacher, yeah, if I'm lucky, I'm getting feedback on writing a week later. And that's too long. And so that was the key component, getting that feedback, but also expanding the feedback on what it is in terms of type of style of writing, which AI is now scoring that so much more better. And then the other actually writing, in the process of writing, we have an AI embedded tool we call Oscar that the student can ask questions of. It would be like you, the teacher, sitting next to me, the writer, and in the middle of writing, I had a question for you. You're not going to give me the answer about, write this sentence, but you'll give me support, you'll give me ideas in the structure of the writing prompt. That's what Oscar does. So we've trained Oscar to do that. And so the teacher gets the information, the students gets the information, and then you mentioned reference to the writing classroom. AI score then pivots it over to, well, this is what you should do then, educator, with strategies that are underutilized, back to the research, underutilized strategies that are out there. It's like, here's the data, here's where the challenge is, here's the strategy to try. And the writing classroom, of course, breaks it down in videos and downloadables, et cetera, for the teacher to use. But that's AI score. And in terms of the more important question, as you know, Brian, colleagues like Trey Vasquez, the CITL, which is a cooperation between the University of Kansas and University of Central Florida, Lisa Deeker, Maggie Mosier. I'm just talking about people, here in my own backyard, Kansas, but there's folks out there nationally. This is something that is, I think Trey's quote was, AI is only as dumb as today. It's only going to get smarter.
Exactly. Yes. And I love that quote.
Yeah, and it is. And so there's so many opportunities. So I'll keep mine fairly limited. And CITL, by chance, there's a lot of resources there for the folks that don't know. It's
in the liner notes, CITL.org, y'all.
For me, it's that there's a lot of things to discuss. But for me, I was just with a group of parents, hundreds of parents of kids with Down syndrome, for example, down in Orlando. And it's like, this is a game changer. And so now it's like, how do we implement it? And the way we were discussing it is, where are the barriers? Or what are the barriers that are created by the environment that are limiting your child, particularly our conversation was access to the classroom. It's all new parents know this, and that is, not all, but most, and that is, I want to get my child ready for preschool. Oh, they need to be potty trained. The barrier is, I'm not potty trained. And so we know in Down syndrome world, a lot of that is literacy. They can't read. Sorry, we're going to take you over here. So now AI, oh my gosh, text levelers. There's so many other things that AI can do to allow for that literacy not to be the barrier that it once was. And so to me, it's non-negotiable. We have to integrate these things in. And so it's not so much the tool of the day, but rather, as we know, AI is really advanced in that, okay, yes, I can do prompts, but I can become a bit of a prompt engineer, for lack of a better word. Right. But increasingly, these things have been gift wrapped for us. Now, again, there's lots of different ways to unpack what I'm saying. I'll just keep it simple for a limited time. But tools like Magic School, tools like Brisk, tools like NotebookLM, that wasn't created for educators, and it sounds like Google's doing something a little different now with it. But those types of things are prepackaged, and that I get to use all the features and supports of AI without having to be particularly effective in my prompts. And of course, without having to inform the AI about what I'm trying to do, what a rubric is, et cetera, et cetera. Right. I can go to a place that already knows what a rubric is, and then quickly get that rubric. Of course, in special education, we've seen that in IEPs. Colleague Olivia out of University of Central Florida has really tried to maximize that, but it's where that can help in that process. So it's really, to me, a game changer in that, yes, effective, efficient, but it's really altering that experience so that accommodations that used to be a requirement aren't necessarily a requirement at all or needed, because, of course, how I'm designing things right from the get-go with the use of the tools from an AI perspective. Again, so much more to unpack.
There's tons there, but even within that, so the couple things that I really love is this concept that, AI, especially an AI score, it is not, and if folks, if you want to check it out, we'll have it in the liner notes, but it's a great project because the AI is not going to answer the questions for me, right? The AI sits next to me as an assistant, as assistive in its use. And it gives me pointers. It asks me questions. It is really like being in a Google Doc with a peer that is peer editing with me, or a teacher that is peer editing with me. And its feedback, the feedback that it gives is just really constructive. And it's really about me increasing my skill so that it grows as my skill grows because of the AI engine. As my skill grows, so does the comment, right? And so it's really quite an interesting project. I think it's really a game changer for when we talk about writing. But then this idea and this concept of like, it's not, if you design with intentionality, it is not that AI is going to take over something. It's that AI is a really efficient tool and powerful tool for doing these things that have been barriers. This is a barrier that we can address, and AI addresses it in a very unique and specific way. But you don't have to be an AI engineer to do it. There are
No.
plenty of things out there that will already help you at least get your feet wet. And then as you get more into it, you can do all sorts of fun stuff. But there are things that are out there. And I love that quote from Trey, that AI is only as smart or as dumb as it is today, right? I love that quote because I think that that's really kind of where we're at, and it's just going to keep growing. I want to kind of switch our gears and just ask you, I got to ask you, for people in the future, you've mentored just countless educators, researchers, graduate students, your impact, we've talked about it, but like, I just think it's really impressive. If I were to ask you, man, if you've got advice for this next generation of UDL leaders or the next generation of UDL practitioners or current ones to make a meaningful impact in this field, what is your advice?
I was with a group of fairly knowledgeable educators in this convening we just had in Orlando right after the National Down Syndrome Congress. So therefore, it's very, I've heard of UDL, sure, but they don't know what the framework is.
Right.
And so my advice to future leaders is all this, there's so much work to be done in the level of implementation. The framework still stands as a great value. It's how do we implement in a meaningful way? And that's a very simplistic response, but gosh, there's so much in that. Everything from a leadership perspective to the educator to the family members. I'll give you one brief example, and that is, again, I'll just use the group I was with. I was with parents and also educators, but these parents were talking about, oh gosh, what tools should I use from an AI perspective? And really what I wanted to share with them is that, yeah, there's lots of tools out there, but
Sure.
How are you framing what you're trying to do? Like if you're trying to represent materials in a variety of different ways or information in a variety of different ways, then let's narrow that down, identify your barriers, and then from there, look at the solution. And of course, the solutions and supports could be, AI based, but it's using the framework to be able to do that and understanding the framework, unpacking the framework, et cetera, et cetera. All these years, I'm not seeing, if we are to meaningfully include all our learners and address the variability of all our learners, disabled individuals with disabilities or not, I don't know of a better framework. I don't know of a better way to structure it. It needs more legs. It needs further implementation in terms of how to do it. And as you know, we've got these discussions. It's not just op. We don't do UDL, et cetera, et cetera.
Nope.
So
Nope.
It's that implementation. And yes, it's going to be a combination of further understanding what that means from a research perspective, but also then giving examples and giving ways to very practically implement it for very busy educators and very busy family members. I know it's very simplistic.
Yeah, but I think that it's not simplistic. Your answer and your response is not simplistic because it is the same question that we have been asking since I first got into UDL, since I first discovered it and started walking down this UDL kind of like pathway, right? It has always been the question of people may recognize that it's a thing, and there's really not much to disagree with in the UDL framework as far as like large concepts. Like there's nothing in there where, if you are saying, I don't want every student to be able to learn. I don't want to succeed. I don't want opportunities. I don't care about marginalized students. Then yeah, UDL is not for you. And I would dare say probably education isn't, but it is the implementation of it, because implementation is so hard to quantify in some ways. Like you've done, we've talked about the work of just looking at it from research perspective, but UDL, I can't go and watch UDL in my neighbor's classroom necessarily the same way that I could watch a reading intervention or something, right? I just can't observe it in the same fashion because it is unique to the moment. It's unique to the students and the combination of students, the community of learning that you've built, and you as an educator. Like all of those factors play into it. So yeah, as implementation grows, maybe more people will learn about it. But yeah, focusing on implementation is a massive part. It is the work that you have done, and it's probably the work that will remain your career.
A lot of colleagues have done. A lot of colleagues
exactly.
Have done.
There's a ton of people behind it.
And it's applying elements. So from a research perspective, it's applying elements of implementation science. It's that doing things with fidelity. And in certain circles, that's a cautious word, but as researchers continue to help the field better understand some of that structure. and then translate that into, okay, now how do we, make it, how do we implement it? So I'd hate for someone to listen to this and say, well, Sean, you got the wrong award.
Yeah, there is implementation science in it. There's research science in it, and there is innovation science in it, which is something that we don't often talk about, is the process of innovation and what that means. And not just innovation in the moment, but innovation long-term, right? And UDL it is a malleable enough concept and framework that it can encompass all of those things. But I don't think that implementation is devoid of research, and research is devoid of implementation. And your career, right? Your career obviously highlights that you believe that's that same thing. So I love that response. And while it seems on the surface like it may be simple, once you dive into it, like you said, that could be a 2-hour podcast on its own, my friend. It's a 2-hour episode all by itself. But I do want to recognize your time and the time that we have spent. And I do have one last final question for you, and it's more a Bryan Dean question than it is a UDL question, my friend. But if UDL had an official dance move, what would it be, do you think?
I don't know how to answer that. If it had
That's why I ask them.
Theme song.
Give me the theme song, brother. That's fine.
Theme
Good.
song would be more like Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen.
Yeah.
And there's so many different parts of that music. It's doing so many different things. And yet together it's a song, together it's music, together it's rock. And yet individually, wait, what's this? And that to me, the framework, the UDL framework. And by the way, you can appreciate parts of Bohemian Rhapsody without appreciating the entire song. And we can implement elements of the framework without implementing the entire framework. Oh, yes, we can, for those that say we can.
Yes. That's a great answer.
To me would be representative. Sorry, and have I danced?
Dance. I kind of purposely put this one in here to be a stumbler, because I love to. But yeah, maybe there isn't a dance move for UDL because it's dance your own way, right? Like that's fine. But like this concept of the theme song being Bohemian Rhapsody and being because of its complexity and then its overall beauty and then each piece being beautiful. Brother, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for our conversation today and hanging out and just spending this time with me. Yeah. And then this one, folks, you're going to want to check out the liner notes of the episode and the episode notes, because we're going to drop some just really great resources and just highlight the work that Sean has been doing. And so for me, I will, as I always say, peace, love, and belly rubs, y'all. Let's get out there and do the work. And I just appreciate your time, Sean. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, Bryan.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Learning Experience Podcast. We are so glad you're a part of this conversation.
And if you're like me and today's episode sparked some ideas or got your brain flowing, just remember, there's so much more to explore out there.
And remember that CAST is leading the way when it comes to accessibility, workforce innovation, professional development, and research.
So visit cast.org to dive deeper. That's CAST.org, and keep learning with us.